If you want to see only one graph to understand the current economic crisis, the death of the dollar, and money in general, then I would show you this. This graph illustrates how the price of one can of tomato soup has changed from 1898 until 2022. As you can see from the graph, the price of the soup hadn't almost changed since the beginning until 1971. So for over 70 years, the price stayed stable, around 10 cents. However, it started going up in 1971 and became even more dramatic after 2020. Why? How did the same soup become 15 times more expensive? I mean, if you think about it, in the 19th century, production was much more difficult and costly. It required a lot of labor and hard work, mainly because the technology wasn't developed yet. Today, one machine can probably produce hundreds of cans in the exact same time that it took to produce only one can in the 19th century. How is it possible that despite all those technological advancements and cost reductions, the same soup today has become 15 times more expensive? Did the tomato become rare? Of course not. So what has changed? Well, the thing that has changed isn't the soup or the tomato. It's the dollar. The reason the price was stable is that until 1971, we were on the Bretton Woods monetary system. Under this system, all the world currencies were tied to the US dollar, and the dollar was tied to gold. Even though the dollar wasn't backed by gold 100%, it was still enough to keep everybody under control. However, things changed in 1971 when American President Nixon ended the Bretton Woods monetary system. On this date, all the countries stopped using real money, gold and silver, and started using fiat currency. Having no relation to gold meant that they could print as much currency as they wanted. The true story this chart is telling is that it was not the can of soup that changed, it was the dollar that changed. The can of soup did not go up, the dollar went down. Since 1971, no country on earth uses money anymore. We all use currency. The thing you have in your wallet or in your bank account isn't money. It is currency. There is one huge difference between currency and money. Money holds its value over a long period of time, but currency doesn't. If someone argues with you that we are using money, then ask them these two questions. Number one, ask them if they believe that money should hold its value. They'll say yes. Two, ask them if they believe there is inflation. Again, they will say yes. Then let them explain how these two things can exist at the same time. How can you use money and at the same time have high levels of inflation? If what you bought last year now costs you 30% more, then you are not using money, you are using currency. Everything has a cost, including currency. When you are buying something, you are offering to sell your currency to someone who is willing to buy your currency from you and pay for it with something they own, such as a product or service. For example, the grocery store is buying currency from you and offering a product in return. Another way of looking at it is whenever you sell something, either labor, talent, or ideas, you are buying currency. If this is the case, then what is the dollar's price? In other words, how has the dollar's purchasing power changed over the last 100 years? Let's take a look again at the same chart I showed earlier, but in this case, it is measured in soup instead of dollars. This chart is basically an upside-down version of the previous one, and again, the blue line shows the date when the money became currency. On the left side of the chart, it's the number of cans of soup one silver dollar was worth. On the right side of the chart, it's the amount of soup that a modern fiat currency, the paper dollar, is worth. For the 70 years from 1898 to 1971, $1 of real money was worth about 10 cans of Campbell's tomato soup. Today, $1 of fiat currency is only worth 2/3 of one can. It is not even one can. The dollar has lost about 93% of its purchasing power since 1971. Again, it wasn't the soup that changed. It was the dollar. Another important concept you need to understand is the difference between price and value. Price means nothing. Value is everything. Though the concept may sound strange at first, this is another essential lesson that will help you decode the true nature of the financial world. It goes like this. Even though the price of something may be rising, its value could be dropping at the same time. What? Excuse me? A price is just a measurement we use to agree on how many units of currency a product or service will trade for. But the value of that same item is what you can buy if you decide to sell it. For example, if an investment doubles in price, but the cost of living goes up 4 times over the same period of time, then even though your investment doubled in price, its value actually fell by half. If the above example wasn't clear enough to understand, then imagine that I offer you $1 million per month in order to come and work in my company. It sounds amazing, right? $1 million per month. Well, what if you find out that 1 cup of coffee costs $60,000? How about now? Does it still sound like it's a great salary? Probably not. This is why price means nothing. Value is everything. This is one of the most important lessons that an investor needs to understand. For example, let's say you bought a house 20 years ago and now the price has doubled. Here's the question: has the value doubled as well? Well, it all depends on what you're measuring it against. If you're measuring it against other real estates, the answer is absolutely not. Because if you sell your house, you can't buy 2 similar houses. You can only buy 1. So even though its price doubled, measured against real estate, its value stayed the same. Today, all societies on Earth use fiat currencies, which means their value constantly goes down. That is why you can't rely on price to make decisions. You have to look at the value. Unfortunately, today people know the price of everything in the value of nothing. Here's a scary fact about fiat currencies. There have been thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies in history, but none of them has survived. Their lifespans were on average about 27 years, and none of them, not even one, has survived. They have all gone to zero. It is a 100% failure rate. By their very design, all national currencies lose value. They must lose value because they are being constantly printed. You might ask, if the currency loses value, then where does that value go? In other words, if the currency in your pocket loses purchasing power, then where does that purchasing power go? Does it just vanish into the air? No. It is transferred from the currency in your bank account to the entity that created the new currency. It transfers your stolen purchasing power to whoever receives the newly created currency first. Imagine it this way. Imagine every newly printed currency as a robber who secretly comes to your home at night when you sleep, takes the currency from your pocket, and then cuts a small bit of it with a scissor. Then it goes to your friend's house and does the same thing. It continues visiting every single person in the economy who has the currency and steals just a little bit from everybody. This is a bit of a childish explanation. No one comes to your house and cuts the corner of your currency, but they do cut and steal its purchasing power. Printing new currency is literally robbing others who already have that currency. By a continuing process of inflation, the government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft. John Maynard Keynes, the 20th century's most influential economist. Here is another question you might ask. If currency printing causes a loss of purchasing power and inflation, then how come we had several years of no inflation, even when the central banks were printing astronomical amounts of currency? Here's the thing. Inflation via currency creation is never evenly distributed across all areas of the economy. Whatever sector the new currency flows to inflates that sector into a bubble. Perhaps you didn't notice severe inflation from 2000 to 2020 because most retail goods remained relatively cheap. But you certainly did notice that the rich were getting richer, stock market and real estate were going up. Remember this, every new unit of currency must go somewhere. Currency creation is inflation, but it is selective inflation. This is the main reason why the stock market has been going up and the rich are getting richer. I will show you 2 graphs and you will see the correlation yourself. This first graph shows the correlation between the monetary base and the Wilshire 5000 index. Monetary base simply means how many dollars the American Central Bank injected into the economy, and it is shown with a green line in the graph. And the Wilshire 5000 is an index that tracks the performance of the entire stock market in the United States. It is shown with the black line in the graph. Note that until 2008, there is absolutely no correlation. However, after 2008, once the American Central Bank started printing currency, the economic term is quantitative easing, the correlation is nearly perfect. When the amount of currency rose by 10%, the value of the stock market rose by 10%. When it went up by another 20%, then the stock market followed. The correlation is an astounding 97%. Do you really think that's merely a coincidence? Of course, the stock market soared. The stock market is a patient that has been on artificial life support since 2008. And now the doctor thinks that he can just pull the plug without the patient dying. Another thing I mentioned was how printing money has caused the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. This graph shows the amount of deposits owned by the richest, 10%, red line, and the poorest, 90%, blue line. From the graph, you can easily see that before America started printing currency, up until 2008, the bottom 90% was on top, owning more than 50% of deposits, and the top 10% was below, owning less than 50%. But since 2008, when printing started, they've switched positions. And now the top 10% owns 66% of the deposits, while the bottom 90% owns just the remaining 33%. Should we blame the rich? No, they didn't do anything. In fact, it's just the opposite. They are the people who started businesses and made the products and services we buy. They create jobs and take incredible burdens and pressures running those businesses. These are the people who create most of the prosperity in our society. Without them, there wouldn't be much of an economy. So don't demonize them. It's not their fault. They didn't do this. I know we talked about quite a few things in this video, so I'd like to sum everything up with 3 lessons. Before I do that, please consider sharing this video with others if you feel like this is a topic that more people need to know about. Now, back to the summary. Number 1, know the difference between money and currency. Money holds its value, currency doesn't. Today, no country on earth uses money. We all use currency. Number 2, rulers, emperors, and authorities will always try to cheat money. This fact never changes. Never. They always find a way to cheat it. Look back to history and you will see many examples of this. 3, know the difference between price and value. Price means nothing. Value is everything. One of the main functions of money is the measure of value. But since we are not using money anymore, you can't trust currencies to serve as a measure of value. Just like other measuring systems, such as liter or meter, money also needs to be stable for society to function properly. If you would like to learn more, I strongly recommend checking out Mike Maloney's new book called The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century. This video is created based off of the first few chapters of that book. There is a tremendous amount of great information in the book about the economy, money, and the coming crisis. I think the name of the book should be a bit different because it is more like an economic textbook rather than a book about gold and silver. The reason I believe he named it that way is because all his research shows that right now almost everything is in a bubble except gold and silver. He expects that in the coming crisis, gold and silver will perform extremely well. One of the main reasons he thinks that way is that never in history have all the countries in the world had fiat currencies simultaneously. And never in history has currency been printed on this scale. Now, I'm not a gold and silver broker, and I don't want to romanticize gold and silver, but there is one undeniable fact. Gold has a 5,000-year-old track record. It has served as a store of value for centuries, especially during times like this that we are facing today. Personally, I've been buying gold and silver for years as a way of storing value. I often get asked where I buy it. If you are interested, I will put a link in the comments section to the company I use to buy gold and silver. I will also leave a link to Mike Maloney's book. 2 chapters of the book are available online for free. I will also put a link to that. Finally, the things mentioned in this video are not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Just because someone makes videos on YouTube, it doesn't make them an expert. So, please do your own research. Thanks for watching.